Alright, first sneeze right off the bat. Hello, Game Cooker US Rocks VR here, playing some Hunter Primal. Hope everyone is doing well. Welcome to the stream. Feel free to join the server. There's no password. No, I don't have my laptop, unfortunately. So, oh hey, Rin. Somebody's on already, huh? So I may miss your chat. I'm gonna try to pay attention to it. I don't have my laptop because it's upstairs and somebody's asleep and the door is locked, so I don't want to bother anybody. So I figured I'd jump into Primal since it's been a while. I'm kind of disoriented right now. Where am I? Okay, now I got my bearings straight here. I'll try not to sniffle much. We had a lot of rain and it was kind of like wet and cool and then wet again and then hot and then wet and now it's hot again. It's kind of strange me wearing headphones again. It's funny when you like play different kinds of games. It's like it's like when you go back to a totally different kind of game. It's like almost like you have to relearn how to ride the bike, you know? So feel free to hop in the game. Everybody is welcome. So I don't know if you guys have been following my Skyrim gameplay or Skyrim VR. I can tell you, playing Skyrim in VR versus playing it on the desktop is like two totally different worlds, man. And it's very strange how just simply putting a headset on your head and blocking your eyes from seeing the outside world changes your whole perspective. You know? Like, I really enjoyed Skyrim 2nd edition or whatever it was called, special edition, on the desktop. But when I got into VR, I mean, I was just transported into the world itself. And just like when I was fighting the dragon and he was like coming down on me, I mean, it's just like there's no, you can't feel that when you're looking at a screen. It's like, it's just hard to explain. Like, In other words, certain emotions are added to your experience because even though you know you're in a game, because it's so surreal, because all you see is like the world, like when I'm looking at this screen here, I can see the TV and I can see the camera, pointing at me. And the computer here and the window over there. It's like you have all these like things that are like kind of like a collage. It's like looking at a collage, an incomplete picture. But you see all the little parts. When you're in VR, it's like, the game is just wrapped around you. Like, there's no break. It's very, like I said, very surreal. Do I have any arrows? Oh, I do have arrows. There you go. I wanted to get the vertebrae, but I missed just a little bit. Hello. It's gonna get stuck. Can't be like bleeding to death already. Although these things do cause a lot of bleed damage. Another rainbow. 2 rainbows. Yeah, I'm not real good with this thing. That was probably a good lung shot there. Wow, she's almost dead. She might end up dying. There you go. Dead. Huh. Very good. Gotta be careful, there might be more. So back to what I was saying before. You know, VR is not just how much rain are we gonna have? It's been like raining. Okay, rain, you can stop now. I can't hear myself talk. So, virtual reality is not really hyped up. Okay? Man, I was watching all the YouTubers in the beginning and the PC, like, you know, the PC YouTube channels, you know, like PC Mag and PC Gamer and, you know, all the normal, common, you know, well-known, you know, gaming, supposedly gaming. They're more, most of them are propaganda machines now. They were all bought out by leftist companies and stuff, or leftist individuals. But that's another story. They were just like trashing VR, trashing VR. There wasn't enough games. There wasn't this. It's, you know, not clear. It's, you know, whatever, not comfortable on the face. It's, you know, you need a lot of space to play. You know, all this like negativity was like towards it, and I'm like going, man. And you know, this is all, this kind of like talk that you kind of catch a lot from is the mentality of the left. The mentality of the left wants to destroy progress. They call themselves progressive, but they want to destroy all the progress that we've made in the past. And they want to progress forward under their ideology and their plan. So don't get fooled by the word progressive, because it's really just a loaded term. Because if you have a person that's an entrepreneur, right, has an entrepreneur kind of mindset, somebody who is like, you know, I wanna create something and I want to market it, or I want to start a business and I want to grow it, or, you know, or I want to make something better that's already existing, or simply just because I want to be my own boss. You know, I don't want to take, you know, I don't want to be under a manager or have someone else tell me what to do when I'm doing my job, or I want to do a job that I like to do under my own, you know, where I am king, you know, of myself. These are all like, I don't know, I don't even like calling them traditional values. I mean, I know that's a term that we like using an awful lot, or American values, or whatever the case is. I think that everyone everyone, or at least most people in their mind, want to be their own boss. You know, would love to have their own business, would love to create something and market it, you know. I don't really understand how anyone could purposely want to be under a system where everyone is equal. Okay? Because if in order to make everyone equal, you have to push the bar, you have to make the bar flat. And it won't really be one bar, it's going to be several layers, okay, of bars. I hear a Utah tracking me. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So in other words, let's just say that we adopt the socialist system or whatever, which God forbid we do. Okay, and you know, I know how I already know how it sounds and all that stuff. I'm 50 years old, so I mean, I've heard it all before. You know, we've been hearing the same old crap, just regurgitated every generation, every 20 years, you know. So what you have when you make everyone supposedly equal, okay? Now mind you, this isn't equal under God, like where there's a necessarily love thy neighbor as thyself, and where there's, you know, you're living a selfless life, where there's no selfishness, you know? This is not the kind of equality that the ident Marxism wants. Because that's what it's a hybrid of. Identity politics and Marxism. That is a lot of Utah. I don't want to use this gun, but really? He's not dead? Whoa. I have to switch guns. Whoa. A Utah raider. Well, I attracted everybody, didn't I? Yeah, bear with me, everybody. Bear with me. I got a lot to say today, and it's all good information. These little guys are pretty aggressive today, aren't they? I saw plenty of YouTube videos about people trying to explain like the difference between communism, socialism, you know, hybrid systems and all that stuff. And you know what? It's it's it it's not complicated. Everybody wants to make everything complicated or make everything overly simplified. And it really just comes down to this, okay? Do you want total freedom or do you want government control? That's really how it is. There is no real in between. You know, I mean, yes, you do have a form of like government control that has to be in place when it comes to like law and order, right? You can't have like people just running around murdering and stealing stuff and all that stuff like they're allowing to go on in the cities. Um, the Democrats. Um, that is unacceptable. Okay, like no one should accept that because that is not, especially if you're claiming that you are like for the betterment of humanity. You don't like hurt people to get your way. Okay, that's evil. You don't have to be religious, you know, to believe in evil. That's evil, you know. You don't allow people to simply get hurt to get your way. Um, and that's the other part of this whole ident Marxism. You know, who is the one who champions cancel culture? That would be the ident Marxists, the leftists, the Democrats. You know, who agrees with firing you if you have a different viewpoint or if you believe things differently? That would be the leftists or Democrats, right? The ident Marxists. Um, so they talk about the Constitution, they talk about democracy, and they want to say that they love America, but America stood for less tyrannical control from the central government. That's what America was started on. And that's how it grew big and great, okay, in the world, based on that motto. Um, you know, of course, people want to talk about capitalism, blah, blah, blah. We call it a free market. It's a free market, okay? Capitalism, uh, who cares? Like, it's not really capitalism in its whoever talked about back in the 1800s or whatever. I heard people talking about, well, capitalism originally was this and that and that and this, and you know, it's like, well, who cares what it was back then? It is what it is today. It's we call it a free market, a market that allows the consumer to make a decision to buy or refuse to buy a product. It's out there, it's available. People can just start a business. They can just make a product and market it, or whatever. Buy junk and resell it on Amazon. you allow the consumers to drive the market, and decide on who's going to win and who's going to lose. You don't bring the government in to say, well, solar power is going to win, or whatever, gasoline's going to win or lose, whatever. So this is why um, regulations are not good. Now, whenever the left talks about regulations, they only talk about the specific ones, right? You'll always hear them talk about the banks, right? Or the corporations. If we don't have regulations, then the corporations are going to abuse things, and the banks are going to abuse things, and the factories are going to abuse things. But that is just a very small number of regulations. Okay, and most conservatives don't have a problem with giving the banks some regulations, or giving some corporations some regulations, or giving factories, so they don't dump chemicals in the ground, regulations. Everyone is for those regulations. Okay, those regulations are rarely, if ever touched. They're never changed. Okay? The regulations that conservatives say that they don't want in place are the ones that make it impossible for a small business to thrive. Okay, this is what you never hear in the media. Okay, is that the Democrats always put regulations in place that make it hard for small businesses to thrive. They also raise taxes, which make it hard for small businesses to thrive. Which then drives down wages. Okay? If a company is thriving and they're making a lot of money and they're having a big profit, it's not because they're paying the workers low wages. Okay? There's a lot of factors that go in that whole scenario about wages, right? Like, you could start a union, okay, and negotiate. A lot of companies will pay their workers more if they're doing well. But again, if they're in the type of company where the regulations may not stay the same in the long term, then they're not going to be raising their wages very much. Okay, and this is the problem. If Democrats come in, they drive up regulations, they raise taxes. When the Republicans come in, they take away regulations, they lower taxes. So, don't be fooled, like, whenever, again, the rhetoric that comes from the media and these supposed economists who are on the left, they're always going to talk about recession. It's like they love throwing that word around. Like when Bush was in office, he started the war, blah, blah, blah. We supposedly went into a recession, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the recession, and then of course we had the economic crash in 2008, which had nothing to do with Bush. It had nothing to do with Bush. It did have to do with regulations, and it had to do with policy. That was in the 90s, when the Democrats were insisting that minorities be able to get loans easier, that poor people be able to get loans easier, that people in general just be able to get loans easier to buy a house and all that stuff, and get easy pay loans. Okay? So what you really had was a loan boom, from the 90s into the 2000s. And people were just getting loans, even when they really couldn't afford to pay it back. They were buying houses, even though they were like just on the edge of being able to pay that mortgage. You know what I'm saying? So if they lost their job, boom, they wouldn't be able to pay the mortgage anymore. Or if they got less money for some reason or whatever. So this is what caused the big bubble. It had nothing to do with Republicans except for the fact that they agreed to this, you know, these bad policies. And there was no good regulations put in place. And no foresight on how the policy would affect things. So what you had was, like, in a nutshell, these little mortgage companies were like, man, we can get money from the Fed or wherever, from the banks easy, and we can start giving out these loans for people to buy houses, right? Because once the person buys the house, the mortgage companies basically, they're getting the money from the bank, and the owner now has to worry about paying the loan back. So the mortgage companies get the big cut, and then the loan is passed off to the bank, who now deals with the customer. So the bank doesn't know what the mortgage company did with the person. All they saw was, oh, met all the criterias, check, check, check. Here comes another Rex. And approved loan. And then the mortgage company would sell that loan to the bank to put it in the portfolio, right? So the bank would then take over that loan and then, you know, have to deal with the house, the owner, the mortgage payer. And what you had in the beginning, everything was fine, but then these mortgage companies realized that you can just kind of, like, it was so easy to get money from the feds. Oh, I'm really far away, I just noticed. Chasing this guy. Yeah, he's got the upper hand now. So the mortgage companies, there was a whole bunch of mortgage companies started up because they saw how easy it was to just get people to buy houses. I hate when they do that. So, they were just selling houses, passing off the loans to the banks, and the banks were just sucking these up. And then the hedge fund guys came and put all these portfolios together, and were then selling stocks against these hedge funds. So eventually, what happened was, is as people, for whatever reason, lost their job or moved jobs or just couldn't pay the mortgage anymore because it was too much to begin with, if they came on any kind of hardship, um, it would be terrible for them. And then eventually people just stopped paying the mortgage altogether and just left the house and just basically foreclosed. So, to make a long story short, the foreclosures just started piling up, and the banks started panicking, and the hedge funds started drying up because they kept selling stocks against these bad loans, and then eventually you couldn't rob Paul to pay Peter anymore, because as new people came in, that would be the money that they would pay against the stocks of the people that were already in there. So eventually, though, they couldn't sustain that, and it just broke down and crumbled. And then as the hedge funds went under, the banks, of course, had their investments in those hedge funds. Boom. So then the bank stocks started crashing because they were losing tons of money. And, you know, remember all that, most of the economy around the world was tied into these mortgages. And everything just came down crashing eventually. I'm kind of simplifying that a little bit, but, you know, that was the deal. And that was all because of the whole easy loan thing. We got to give poor people and minorities and just regular people, easy loans. What happened? Oh, here it is. And that's, in a nutshell what happened. So that had nothing to do with Bush's going to war. Nothing at all. In fact, war actually is a boost to the economy initially. Anyway, but that's another story. It does drive up the debt, of course, but that can be offset by making good policies later. I'm not saying that I want to go to war. I don't like war. Nobody does. But the 2008 crash had nothing to do with it. And you can't say, well, corporations are bad, banks are bad, blah, blah, blah. No, when you create a situation where people can easily take advantage of things, people are going to take advantage of things. That's human nature. How can I make a fast buck? I mean, this is why people risk their lives in the cities, especially, selling drugs on the streets. That is a very dangerous game. Um, and it usually ends badly for a lot of people. But why do they do it? Because it's an easy buck, right? You can make however much money a night, couple $100 a night selling drugs, So if people are willing to take that risk, they're going to do it. So, you can't say corporations are bad, business is bad, banks are bad, blah, blah, blah. Now the banks, you could say a lot of the banks didn't realize what was really going on with these mortgage companies. The mortgage companies were the ones who were the main bad guys, because they're saying, okay, this guy has a job, he can looks like you can pay it. They may not have been putting all the proper information even on the applications. And the banks were just kind of like taking these portfolios without really looking at them carefully, assuming that the mortgage companies were doing their due diligence. So it was a big mess. It was a big, big, big mess. So again, Democrats' policies. You know, the Republicans, of course, they were too afraid to oppose it because they're always their reaction, and this is what the Democrats always use to their advantage, is to guilt the Republicans into doing things. So the Republicans were like, man, if we don't agree to this, then we're going to look bad to poor people, or we're going to look bad to minorities, and we don't want to look bad to minorities and poor people because we do care about poor people and minorities. You know, conservatives, a lot of conservatives are minorities and black people, despite what the media might tell you. So today the left is using racism now to guilt people into coming to their side or to complying with them. You know, so the Republicans for the past 10 years, they didn't want to be called racist, you know, because they're not racist. You know, conservatives are not racist. So the left has been using that to basically beat people, verbally beat people into compliance. And of course, now we caught on to it, maybe a little too late. So I'm gonna get back to this whole economic equality thing as soon as this storm stops, and I gotta find out where this Rex is now. Oh, that's not. He's far away. Look, he's got to stop right behind the tree. He's going down. Excuse me. You're not gonna get dinner twice. Sorry. Oh, let me drop my clothing. Huh? What? That's funny. Got everything I need. Two shotguns. 50 caliber. And what happened? There's my bolt gun. I think I'm good. Well, there's some stuff here for somebody. I don't want to carry it anymore. So this whole economic equality thing is a farce. When it comes to everybody will be doing well. Okay? It's a really easy way to look at it. Just imagine like a line that goes like this. Okay, like a mountain. Okay? Or you can even like do like a triangle with a base that goes out. So you have the line starting down here. That would be like your poor, poor people under the poverty level people. Okay, they're down here. Okay, they're just a small segment of the population. Okay, especially in America. So I'm talking about American citizens. Okay, not the illegals. That's a whole separate situation. So you have the poverty people down here, and then you have the population that goes up the scale, right? Until it's like a narrow point at the top where you have the most rich up top. Okay? So you would have most people like it would be kind of a lumpy kind of thing. It would be going like this, like a point down, and it would get fatter, and then there'd be a line that goes across at the bottom. Because you have most of the lower middle class, and upper middle class. Um, so in order for everyone to be economically equal, okay, number one, you would have to force the line to be smushed down. So what you would do is you would have the people at the very bottom go up a little bit, and then everyone above them would be smushed down to their level. Okay? That's how it would work. You can't bring the poverty people up to the top. That's impossible. It will never happen. And you can't even bring everyone to the middle class. That's impossible. Can't happen. So what you end up doing is pushing everyone down to like like a lower middle class maybe level, like an upper poverty, lower middle class. And when I say lower middle class, I'm talking about just above the poverty line. Okay? That's the only way to do it. Okay? The reason for that is when you destroy the top, it destroys all the benefits that the top provided everyone below, meaning investing, starting businesses, growing business, um, you know, all the stuff that entails all that. You just take it away. Okay? Then there's nothing for the middle anymore to take advantage of. The left wants to keep, and the Democrats for years just keep spewing this ridiculous nonsense that because we have billionaires, that's why we have poor people. And that's just never been a fact, ever. Like, there's no evidence to back that up at all. That somehow the billionaire sucks money from the poor people. Like, how does that even, like, happen? It doesn't happen. So, what creates poor people is, number one, a residual welfare system. The rhetoric, meaning the talk that the Democrats give and the left give, that the poor can never get better unless we do something for you. So every time they keep giving that promise, the poor, I'm not saying everybody, but I'm just being general. Poor people in general, they're not ambitious. They don't want to go out and try to make big things happen because they think that they're stuck there because that's what they're told. So, um, so you have a large group of people that don't try, right? They just go into crime or whatever the case is and end up dying or going to prison or whatever, you know, just end up ruining their life in general. So, um, what makes people rise up is opportunity. Okay, if there's no opportunity, then there's nothing for you to do. Okay? So if there's no jobs, then you won't have a job. You see? If there's no way for me to invest, then I'm not going to make a return on the money that I wasn't able to invest. You see how that works? So an economy has to be set up where there is opportunity across the board. Okay? And yes, there is a negative side to that, like there is with everything. You're gonna when you open up an economy in such a way where there's opportunity across the board, there is going to be people in that system that want to try to abuse it, There's just no way around that. You'll never stop it. Um, and it's the same thing with the welfare system. People abuse the welfare system. Um, because maybe they'd rather sit home and do nothing or not work or whatever. I mean, I'm not saying I believe that there should be a welfare system, but not just for the sake of having it. You know what I'm saying? It has to be there for specific reasons, like when someone does lose their job or they do have a medical problem that keeps them from working or whatever the case is. Um, I'm all for that, and most conservatives are okay with that. Um, flicker. See if I can hide behind this rock. Nice, got him. 3 shots. Okay, so you have to have a free market society in order for opportunity to be there. Okay? The government cannot provide anything. Okay, the government runs off of taxes. It runs off of an economy doing well. It runs off of trade. You know what I'm saying? Like even trade with other companies when taxes are levied, that goes to for the country to better the country, right? So and of course, the Fed is there to provide money for, you know, banks to borrow to be able to lend to other people and all that stuff. Although I think that, the Fed is kind of like something that needs to be revamped, but that's another story. So the equality thing is a farce. You're not gonna have a utopian society where everyone is just doing so great and well and they'd be able to take vacations all the time. And I just heard something. You know, be sitting pretty, be able to get anything you want. Oh, there is a Rex right there. I'm gathering the attention of the big guys. So, like I said, in order for everyone to be equal economically, everybody's got to be smushed down to the bottom. And this is what you have in countries like Venezuela, right? You basically have a country full of poor people now that get their little stifling checks. Most of them just sit around, do nothing, very little. You have a lot that still are turning to crime. They're still selling drugs, so that didn't change. You do have a small group of people who actually have jobs, where there's, still what you would call vital, probably based more on tourism and hospitals than anything else, you know. Because, you still got like Wendy's and stuff like that there. There's some fast food joints and stuff, but that's mainly they're mainly making money from tourists. Because in order to get, like, say, a Big Mac, fries, and a drink, I was watching a movie. Why are you guys in here? Don't be too loud, because I'm trying to talk. So, hmm? So the last I seen somebody doing a video, and this wasn't really a political video, it was just somebody vacationing there, sharing their experience. A Big Mac, fries, and a drink costs like a whole month's wages. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, it's pretty insane. Could you, or a week's wages or something crazy. It was crazy. And that's because, you know, in order to sustain this, like paying everybody, and these, you know, they raised taxes. They basically drove the rich people out of the country. They drove all the big business out of the country. They took over the oil, and you know, guys, get away from me, please. Well, you can't talk if you're gonna watch, because I can't hear myself and what's going on in the game. So since they control the oil, people can only get oil, like gasoline, like every so often, like maybe once or twice a week, and that's it. So, and that's the other aspect here that I wanted to show you when I told earlier when I said there's multiple lines. Like the one line is the people. This is the people that you want to make equal economically. They're down here. So they're all basically what we would call poor people now. You know, lower middle class, upper poverty. Okay? If that. Okay? The more people you have in the country, the worse the situation. So, or the more business you drive out, the worse the situation. So, and then up here you have what you call the academics, okay, academia. This is why Bernie Sanders talks about teachers all the time. We're going to give teachers high wages for all teachers. We're going to pay teachers what they deserve to be paid. Okay, why? Because academia is very important when it comes to propaganda. Okay, in order to keep this like horrible system in place, each new generation that comes into play has to be brainwashed into thinking that the system that they're now being born into is the best system, is a good system for the people. Okay? So you have to have this continuing propaganda. So the teachers do fairly well. Okay, they may not do great, but they're going to be doing better than the people down here, the common people. Okay, then you have the military. Okay, they're all going to do fairly well. They won't be like rich, but they're going to have food on their table and whatnot, and whatever. They're going to be also engaging in some corruption because, you know, if they arrest somebody like a tourist, they're going to say, well, you can pay me off, or whatever the case is, and we'll be good. Or we'll keep you in jail for a day, you pay us $600, we'll let you out tomorrow. You know, so this is where the corruption comes in, because there isn't enough, they're not getting paid enough. Okay, so you're going to have a lot of corruption there with the police and the military. And then you have the government. Okay, they're the ones who are controlling the country. They're the ones who are doing well off. They're going to be making millions. They're going to be raking in millions and billions of dollars. Why? Because now they control the industries. They're raking in the taxes wherever there are any left. If you know, and they're sitting pretty. They're the ones that are taking vacations. They're the ones that have all the good stuff. They're the ones that are eating well. Okay, so this is how the socialist system is set up. You have this hierarchy in the bureaucracy. It's now bureaucracy, okay, or the classes. Okay, they're going to give you economic equality, but they're going to have a five, let's see, the people, um, the academia, military. Oh yeah, I forgot about the intelligence agencies. Okay, they're the ones who are like the KGB, basically from Russia. I forgot the five-tier system. The KGB are going to be doing well too. Okay, but they're going to be the ones that are watching everybody. They're the ones who are going to smash down any dissenters, anybody who wants to go against the system. So you have the five-tier system. So most of the population's at the bottom. Then you got the other four groups moving up the scale that are doing better, way better than all these guys down here. So this is the system that they're talking about. This is the utopia. Okay? And don't think that it can't happen or it's not going to happen. Okay? That's what they thought in Venezuela. That everything was going to be good. And there was people that also said it wasn't going to be good because they were trying to remind people about communism. Most communist countries adopt socialism as their system, their economic system. So even the Nazis, they also had a form of socialism, but they were more, what's the word? They weren't like full socialist. They still had business there. But their type of fascism was based on like a, um, kind of racist kind of deal where they got rid of all the undesirables and then just stuck with the Germans, the basically the purebred Germans. So that was a kind of a whole beast in it. That was like its own beast. So the American free market system is all inclusive. Anybody can take part in it. There is no racism. Okay, our laws we already have laws in place to protect everyone from racism. Although the left is the ones who are practicing racism with this identity politics, saying that this group is better than that group, and that group is under this group, and this group is above that group. I mean, that's about as racist as you can get. You know what I'm saying? Look, I told you guys to get out here if you're going to be making a lot of noise. Okay? I don't care if you're in here. You guys can turn the lights on. You got that door closed, right? Really? Well, he would have if I didn't get that if he didn't go down. All right, guys, could you just go outside, please? I mean, I'm not sure like what you're doing in here. So this is why people like me who are Democrat up until the beginning of this year, I left the Democrat Party. Although I was kind of slowly leaving it since Trump got elected because I was really like researching a lot of stuff, educating myself on things. This is why we don't want socialism here. Okay? The system that we have now, the free market, where at least most people have a chance to use the system to thrive and prosper, or at least live, a life where you got food on your table every day and don't have to worry about any of that stuff. it's the best system out there. Um, I understand that people want to talk about like Sweden, Norway, and Finland, and all those places, but they're not doing that well there. And they're not happy, like the polls were saying. There's a lot of people that are unhappy there, especially since this whole identity politics has come to their countries. Um, they're the ones who voted in to have their health care for all, free education, but they didn't do away with the business. Okay, they still are a capitalist society. Okay? And everything works fine as long as everybody is on the same page, which is what they voted. But now the leftists are coming in there and they're bringing this identity politics into play and saying that, oh, look at all these immigrants here, look at all these blah blah blah. They're not doing well, and they're supposed to be doing well, and they're not doing well because you're keeping them oppressed. you know. But no, they're not doing well because they're flooding into the country, and there isn't enough opportunity. This is why you can't just have the floodgates open. Why is it called floodgates? Because you can't stop once the flood comes in, you can't stop it. You can't control it. It just sweeps over everything. You have to create opportunities before you start bringing a ton of people in. Well, the thing just died. I'm a little confused. This guy's invisible, I think. Let me see, maybe I'm wrong. Yep. He's actually not far from me. He's like right here somewhere. Because he just killed that Rex. And most Americans here, we have good health care through our jobs. Or at least I did, when I was working. You can get way better health care through your job, than what the government can offer. So that's a big fallacy too, that everybody will be taken care of. No, that's not how it works. And here in America, we already have like state insurance for poor people, That's something that's been around for a long time already. So we don't need a federal system. Each state can implement its own type of health care for people who can't afford it. So again, that's a fallacy to say that we don't have good health care here. That's just the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I mean, we got so many hospitals all over the place, it's unreal. Like, and medical doctor offices and medical centers and clinics. I mean, it's insane how many we have here in America. Wow, that was weird. Just walked right up on me. Was you blind? And I can tell you firsthand, I'm on state insurance right now. Okay? So, because we as a family, we don't make enough money to be able to afford it ourselves. So, we got into the state program. And I can tell you that the kids are fine, they're taken care of. But when it comes to adults, you can't just do whatever you want to do. Like, you have to get approvals for nearly everything. Um, Now, some things are already in place, like, you can get your teeth cleaned once a year, you can, whatever. All the basic checkups are covered. But if you want to get like an operation or, an X-ray or MRI or something, they may not always approve it, you know, and you might not even get operations approved. So um, it's not, it's not what they tell you it is. It's not great insurance. Um, the basic stuff is covered, yes, but when you go above the basic, it can be a problem. So, but if you had your own insurance through, say, your company, um, you probably would have better insurance coverage. Um, Now, it is true you might need to pay some out-of-pocket expenses. Um, but, again, why shouldn't you expect that for anything major? I mean, I don't really understand where this healthcare is a human right. Like, where does that come from? Like, and what justification do you have for it? Like, most disease, okay, most medical problems, and I know people don't like to hear this, but most medical problems are caused by individuals themselves. Either they don't eat right, they do drugs, they drink a lot of alcohol, they smoke. I mean, that's really where most of the healthcare problems come from. Self-inflicted. So if you destroy your own body, then how has that become a human right when you start having medical problems? How does healthcare become a human right for you when you didn't take care of yourself to begin with? Okay? So this is the conundrum that we have, like with people like me. Now, I worked a job, it was heavy labor and all that stuff, and I destroyed my back. So that wasn't self-inflicted in the sense of it was because of bad eating or something like that. I was just working, I was making a living. And my back got messed up because of my job. So, um, no one forced me to go into that line of work. But I never foresaw that my back would get destroyed. When I was young, I was able to do it. It wasn't a problem. But as I got older, you might know my back just wasn't able to take it anymore. After, whatever, 17 years of doing it. So in situations like that, it's like this is what the system is there for, the welfare system, the safety net as we call it. If in fact you wouldn't be able to go back to work. My problem is lack of education. So since there is no like jobs like since most jobs are service oriented now, which is a big problem. Where did the body go here? Did I harvest it? Older people like me who don't have a degree or anything like that. I'm not saying you have to have a degree, but we don't have any manufacturing jobs here. So I could have went into a manufacturing job where at least I wasn't like humping boxes, for 12 hours a day, So I could have done a sit-down manufacturing job or, some kind of maybe standing, even though that does cause me pain. Oh, he should die. Yeah, he died. I think he died. But I'm not going to get into that, okay? So, a national healthcare system isn't necessarily a better one. And, you have to also understand that here in America, we got 330 million people. In countries like Norway, Finland, and Sweden, who have like what, 5 to 10 million people, you know, and they have oil that's also driving that free stuff, you know, oil companies there. So um, forget about like global warming there, because helping out global warming there, because if you take their oil away, then their whole economy collapses, and you're talking about Venezuela. So, um, in, but again, that's not you don't. I don't see why people say that that is a good model. It's not a good model. When you're basing your whole system on like one particular industry, to me that is like haphazard at the highest degree. The American system thrives because of it's based on many different industries. Okay, so we were a big manufacturing country before, and I hope we can get back to that. Start making stuff here in America again. That would actually make this country like totally like crazily prosperous. That's one of the reasons why our prosperity went down, because manufacturers were driven out because of high regulations and high taxes. Small businesses were not able to thrive either as much because of high taxes, high regulations. A lot of regulations in place, um, which the small businessman can't, they cannot deal with those regulations financially. Um, so this is again what the media doesn't want to tell you, and the leftists and Democrats don't tell you. It's got nothing to do with Republicans or conservatives. You know, I'm not saying that Republicans don't do some dumb things once in a while, but they don't do. They definitely don't destroy economies. So that's the one thing you can say the conservative mind does not do. They're always about a strong economy. So, um, the other thing that I wanted to talk about was today I was hearing some things about, like, Obama was talking yesterday or during the Democrat convention, whatever. He was basically trashing Donald Trump and his presidency, basically saying that he was doing nothing for the country and he was a threat to democracy, and like all these things. Like, it was just so weird for me to listen to, because it was just like the opposite of everything Trump has been doing, which is just weird. What? Yeah, go in the tent. So it was just crazy for me to listen to, because it was just like it hurt my head to listen to what Obama was saying, because everything he was saying was like opposite of what Trump has been doing for the past 3.5 years. He's been lowering taxes, taking away the regulations that were hurting small businesses, and keeping big business from really thriving more, which would create more job opportunities for people. Um, he did the criminal reform, which thousands of people were released from prison because of that, and some are going to have their prison sentences cut really short. So they're going to be getting out of prison too. He did the community economic zones or whatever it's called. Dumping hundreds of millions of dollars into like low-income communities so that they can uh, business can thrive again. Now that was a big deal. That was a real big deal. And isn't it coincidental that all of a sudden we have these riots in the cities, in these communities that needed that? Isn't it something? Isn't it coincidence? So now, guess what? During these riots and these protests, you can't start a business. So who suffers? Who suffers? It's the poor people and the small business entrepreneurs. Trump gave money to predominantly historical black colleges. Boy, what is this guy doing? Yeah, he must have a lot of Utah or something. He gave like $150 million to historically black colleges. I mean, he was closed up the borders. Oh, Tyrannosaurus Rex. Oh, wow. He didn't close the borders totally, so don't believe the media on that. But he tightened up the borders big time, so that you didn't just have this influx of like people coming from South America and Central America, who were actually, a lot of them were criminals. People that the government doesn't want. And then also communist sympathizers. Okay, that's why the Democrats want them here, because they would be anti-America. So, and then they were also people that come here and they just get on the welfare system, or they're just homeless. They're just causing more problems when it comes to the homeless population. So these are the people who make up a lot of the homeless people: the illegal immigrants, the drug addicts, and the mentally, ill. Who the Democrats are not, the mentally ill and the drug addicts, the Democrats are not taking care of. They're not addressing that problem. So, he's helping women. He's willing to sit down and talk with anyone. He says, "Here, I'm here. My doors are open. Whoever wants to come talk, let's talk." And the Democrats were the ones who don't want to talk. But individuals were. These groups were. These historical black colleges were talking to him. These people who wanted to talk about the criminal reform sat down and wanted to talk to him. So people who actually want to get things done, who actually want a better America, make America better, not socialist, not communist, but better, are sitting down and talking to Trump. And the list goes on. There's a whole there's a long list of things that Trump has done with executive orders. The trade deals he fixed, and this is why China is like attacking us right now, in maybe not by military, but they're attacking us politically. They're attacking us, in cyberspace, all these different ways, TikTok, because Trump is going strong on trade, so that we don't get screwed anymore. We've been getting screwed. And this is why, again, the American people are the ones who suffer from these bad policies that the Democrats wanted. So, and the globalists, I'm going to blame some Republicans too, who are these globalist people. So when I heard Obama talking about like doing his little spiel, it was like he was just literally just like lying to the American people. Like, I'm not a crazy person. I was a Democrat before. And I just couldn't believe my ears. Like, he was making out Trump to be some kind of like horrible, tyrannical person who just had no care for America whatsoever. Yes? Well, just take them out. Pick them up and move them. Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, that's because it's time for... Well, they're mature now, Jay. They were babies before, and now they're grown up. So they're everywhere. That's what it is when you live in the woods. You know, we live in the woods, so there's going to be lots of bugs. I wonder where this Rex went. Oh, there he is there. No, it seems like he... Okay, he's back now. I don't know where that Rex went. I'm gonna head over here though. I'm far away from you now. I was close to you, but now I'm far away. So, what I would urge everyone to do is stop listening to the media. Stop listening to the Democrats. Don't even listen to Republicans. You can just listen to people who, like on YouTube, who are conservatives, who are like me, who were Democrats, who came to the middle or to the conservative side, and why we did it. Okay, we care about America. We care about the prosperity of America. Because when America prospers, everybody gets moved up. Everybody gets a boost. You know, it is true. You may not get rid of poor people. You're never going to get rid of poor people. I mean, even Jesus in the Bible, 2,000 years ago said, you will always have the poor with you. You know, but you won't have me with you all the time. So, you know, the poor, and this is what Christianity is about. You know, meeting the needs of the people who don't have, you know, but not getting the government involved to take your money and give it to somebody else, you know, or take you from your position and put you down here, just so that you're equal with this guy, you know. Guys, please go outside. So that's not what I think most people actually want. The only people that want this crazy socialism is people who were misinformed and people who were taught improper history. You know, when you teach history, you have to tell the whole story. When I grew up, we heard about slavery. We heard about, you know, the negatives. We heard about how the country was. We heard about the dealings with the Indians and all that stuff. But we also heard the fact that the Indians were also savages too. Right? And we also heard that slaves were not only owned by white people. And we also heard that some slaves like to be slaves. Now I know that even hurts for me to say. Because why? They were well taken care of. And we also heard that the Democrats were the ones who wanted slavery. You know? They're the ones who were the ones who wanted it. And they're the ones who were resisting it from being abolished. And we were also taught that it was religious people, I guess they were called abolitionists or whatever. They were religious people who championed this whole thing first. You know? Who really went out there and was advocating for this. Christians, okay? The ones who the left are calling the bad guys now. You know, the Christians, the ones who teach love your neighbor as yourself, and that God is no respecter of persons and everybody is equal under God's eyes, is the same. You know? Those Christians. So this whole rhetoric they keep spewing out: racism, 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 systemic racism, corporate racism, government racism, street racism, white racism. It's like it's just insanity and nonsensical. I mean, I was raised by a black man. Now, if anybody was going to cry about racism, it would be him. He grew up in the racist, in the Jim Crow South. His family was from there. But he never once told me that he needed a handout. In fact, he taught me that I need to fend for myself. That I need to go out there and work for what I want. This is a black guy. This ain't no like caramel color or light-skinned black dude. This my stepdad was black. You know what I'm saying? If you're going to call somebody a black person, he was a black person. Okay? Maybe he was a dark brown, but whatever. He was pretty dark. Okay? So he wasn't going to get no light brown privilege. Okay? So he was never complaining to me about he needed a handout or that welfare needed to be increased or socialism was the way to go. And he wasn't stupid. He knew, he went to college. He was in the military. He actually was part of 2 armed forces. He actually joined 2 different armed forces, which was quite amazing. I believe he was in the Navy and the National Guard, if I remember correctly now. So this was way back. He was raising me in the 70s and 80s. After the Civil Rights Movement. So if he thought that there was something missing from the Civil Rights Movement, he would have mentioned it. And trust me, he didn't have a problem speaking his mind. And he didn't have a problem bringing up white and black when it was necessary. You know what I'm saying? So he would have been the first one to say something, because he definitely spoke his mind. That was one of the things that we kind of were annoyed with as kids, because we didn't really get it, when we were kids, like the stuff that he would say. But we get it now that we're older, we understand. So that was a good shot. So if there was a racism problem going on, if there was systemic racism, because it would be, if there was any systemic racism ever, it was back then. Still, 10 years away from the civil rights. From when the Civil Rights Act was passed. But as time went on, in this country, and I've been to a lot of different states and been to a lot of different areas in this country, racism has not been going up, it's been going down. And the only people that brought it back are these Marxists out there who teach us identity politics and Marxism hybrid. And they're using race to divide the country. Be a big one. You don't want to die. So that's it, Now, when I say this isn't a racist country, Obviously, I'm talking about across the board. I'm talking about generally. Most people don't bother each other. They just want to be left alone. They do their own thing. There's no like KKK running around all the time and burning crosses and hanging people at the noose. I mean, if anything, white supremacists are a very tiny, tiny, tiny population. I've been around for almost 50 years and I haven't ran into any KKK members. I mean, if it was so rampant, then you would be seeing it all over the place and hearing it all over the place. So the only people that brought back racism is the left, the Democrats, those who champion this identity politics and Marxism. And that's only to divide the country. If they can divide the country into groups and they bring these little groups on their side saying that, oh, we're for you. We can feel your pain. We understand your suffering. When there really isn't any suffering. See, that's the whole problem. The only people that are suffering are at all are poor people, like real poor people, you know. And a lot of those poor people, like I said, are drug addicts, and people that have mental problems, and the people that have been stuck on welfare generation after generation rather than going out and getting a job. But what I think the left has been doing with these welfare people is if they did come in and inspire them to go to college, they wanted them to do that now because the colleges have been taken over by this leftist propaganda machine. So all these young people that go into college, they're feeding them this identity politics. They're telling them that the country is racist, that the country became great because of all the bad things that we did, And it's like going, well, how does a tree grow? I mean, like, look at this tree right here as an example. How does a tree grow? Like, the tree starts out as this little seedling. It's so, green and flourishing and thriving, and it's growing really fast, right? In the first few months, it grows or the first year, it grows really quick. But as it gets bigger and bigger, what happens? At the bottom here. Those young branches, they break off, right? They break off. Why? It cuts off the things that it doesn't need so that it can thrive up here in the sun, you see? So America obviously started out as a very immature, fast-growing plant. We just, through much blood, gained the colonies. Remember, we were not an imperialist country. So I don't know why people keep saying that. We were not born, when we became a country, we were not imperialistic. We were born from an imperialistic country. Meaning we fought for our own independence from England and became a nation. Okay? 13 colonies. Let that sink in. We weren't powerful. People decided to sacrifice their own life to break off from England, from their tyranny. Okay? There's a Utah. Much blood was shed. And in the beginning, so of course when that happened, everything that happened before that is irrelevant. I know that people don't like to hear that. What do you mean it's irrelevant? Of course it matters. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. because now we are a new nation. It's like tearing down the old house and building a new one. You can't say the new house is the old one anymore. That one's gone. Okay? So, good grief, I wish you would have warned me. So now we start afresh, we start anew. Okay, now were there things in place that were undesirable? Of course. But you have to start somewhere, you know? Because the independence wasn't about fixing existing problems with the colonies. It was about independence from England. That's what it was about, okay? Now, after the Revolutionary War, and this is what people won't talk about, probably don't learn in college or school, after the Revolutionary War, the colonies wanted to break up again. Okay? And all the colonies were not like happy with that, you know? So they really pleaded the case, look, we got to stay together because if we don't stay together, then there's a good chance that England is going to want revenge and they're going to come after us again. So, you know, the southern colonies were saying, well, you know, you guys just don't see the way we see things. You don't see things the way we see things. Okay, we don't see eye to eye, so how can we resolve this? So what happened is for the sake of the Union, the northern countries turned a blind eye, if you want to say that. It was what was it called? There's a word for it. It was a necessary compromise. But there's another term for it. I can't think of it right now. It was a necessary compromise to keep the Union together. So they let the colonies, each of the states now run their states the way they wanted. Pretty much like the colonies, right? The colonies were running themselves. So when they kept the Union, they agreed that every state will be able to run itself however it wants. Okay, so that's really how it was. It was just like basically a continuation of the way that they did things as colonies. Okay, and that's how it was anyway. So it didn't really matter. The colonies were all independent anyway, except for the fact that they were taxed by England, and England was basically their mother country. So that aspect wasn't going to change. But it's time. So what happened in 1812? You had the War of 1812. England did decide they wanted to try to take back the colonies. So it was a good thing that they stayed together. So they won that war, and I wish we would have taken Canada. We should have taken Canada and made that part of the United States. But that wasn't our reason though for war, right? It was for protecting ourselves. So America was never about just like, annexing other countries per se. That wasn't really our initial, MO. So we let Canada still be Canada, even though I think we should have taken it because, they decided to fight against us, so we should have just taken that territory too. But we didn't. So here they are now, leftist as can be. So, but as time went on, obviously, the abolitionists came along and they were saying slavery's not right. These Christian abolitionists, we have to address the problem. It's a human rights situation. It is a humane. In that case, it did have to do with human dignity and human rights. Um, so again, we addressed that problem by what? Going to war. And it's the bloodiest war in history, where over 500,000 people lost their lives. I mean, that's an enormous number. Um, that's the deadliest civil war ever. Um, states' rights did have to do with it, but slavery was a part of that. So, it was, you can say it was both, but that's besides the point. Slavery was one of the big issues. So, in order to free the slaves, 500,000 people died. Now, are you going to say that that didn't matter? I mean, are you just going to like write that off as like saying that didn't pay the price? I mean, this is why I don't get the reparations. The price was paid. It was paid in blood. People lost their lives to free the slaves. It doesn't matter whether the Confederates were part of that death. All human life matters. All human life is precious. And at all costs it should be fought to be saved, you know? Not so you should never like, even if your enemy dies, you should never be like, yes, you know? Because that is a life lost forever. That is a life that can never be replicated again in the universe. Do you know that did you know that there can never be a perfect copy of anyone? Um, Ever? Because even if you didn't believe in God, the universe is going to die eventually, right? It's going to be dead, cold, and lifeless. So if you don't believe in God, that's what you got to look forward to. Nothing. You have to look forward to nothing. You came from nothing, you get to look forward to nothing. You believe in God, you came from something, and you're going to get something in return. But again, I'm not going to get into the religious thing. So the slavery was paid in blood, in the blood of 500,000 plus lives. And then you have a whole bunch of injuries on top of that. So, crippled people. So there's just a lot wrong with the left argument. You can't just like discount, again, going back to the tree grows, the limbs that are not needed or that are bad, they die and fall off. Hence slavery, hence voting rights for women, hence voting rights for blacks, the civil rights movement, blacks being able to go into the military, all these things were growing pains for this country. And all these things were overcome through much suffering, through much personal battle, right? Through much mental strain, through much death, through much heartache, through much suffering. These were overcome. And now what you're going to say is, we're going to bring back racism by splitting everyone up into groups. The Latinos are over here, the blacks are over here, the whites are over here, the Indians are over there, the women are over here, the men are over there, the children are here, the old people are up there. I mean, you're going to start segregating everyone. Like, I don't understand why people don't see what's happening here. It's like it can't be any more obvious. And Christians against Muslims, I mean, Christians against science, you know, the Bible against science. You know, it's like that. They're all. This is what they do. They they just put everyone into these little groups, and then they say this group against that group against this group against that group. You know, they pit so that they can separate. You know, and they can bring all these people over their side to get the vote. You know, and I don't think that they anticipated. I think they started this thing too early. See, they didn't look at the big picture. They didn't see. They didn't take the time to get to know their neighbor. You know what I'm saying? This is what loving your neighbor is all about. Getting to know people, at least try to understand them, acknowledge them, acknowledge their dignity, acknowledge not dignity meaning like free health care, not dying from a disease. Everybody's going to die. So there's no way to get, you're not going to stop death. Taking 50% in taxes from everybody's income is not going to stop you from dying. And really, to have a couple extra years of life, is that worth throwing away 50% of your income where you could have done much, you could have used to enjoy your life much better in the last 60 years you lived? I mean, it's just insane what people will trade off, you know? So I don't know, man. I don't really understand how people can like just be brainwashed so easy. I mean, even these kids that go to college today, I mean, are they that like dopey where they don't like, I mean, when you hear systemic racism, where is it? I mean, you can look and see that it doesn't exist except for in the leftist community. Remember, who's been running the bureaucracies for the past 30, 40 years? Mostly leftists, mostly Democrats. You know, they're the ones who really control the bureaucracy. They're the ones who have been making the policy for these groups that they supposedly have been saying they were going to help all these years, who they've done nothing for. So if there's any racism, it's from them. Nice. Ooh, there's a Rexy. Where? So this is one of the reasons I left the Democrat Party. Not because somebody told me to leave or I was brainwashed somehow with some kind of like conspiracy theory. I was seeing the signs for many years and I didn't do my due diligence to investigate the red flags that I constantly seen, these like things that were being said or these policies that were being put in place. You know, I was just listening to the media, you know, and them telling me how good these policies were and how they were going to help people. looking. Oh, I got him. You know, and I was really starting to pay attention to what was happening like in the late 90s with the TV shows. Like I noticed that like a lot of men were being portrayed as like dummies, you know. And I thought it was just comedy, right? You know? Oh, comedy, they're just acting stupid, you know. And then I also noticed too, and I don't have a problem with, you know, how people want to live their life as far as their lifestyle goes. But I was noticing there was like homosexuality and gay people. You were seeing them a lot on like the TV programs, and then they started showing up on the, you know, the news shows and on the TV programs. You know, just you were just seeing a lot more of it in the movies. And again, I don't have a problem with gay people, but this is I didn't understand the identity politics back then, and that was all the beginning. You know, the minimize the value of men, minimize the value of a father. Gay people are special. You know, they seem to be some kind of special breed of human that you have to like treat a different special way. You know, or that they need all the attention for some reason. So this is how they were being portrayed. And, you know, I always voted in favor of, like, again, I'm all for freedom, right? Freedom for everyone. So if you want to live a certain way, then go, that's your prerogative, you know? Um, I can't force you not to live a certain way. As long as it's not, like, hurting other people, you know, then I don't have a problem with it. Never did. So, and then I noticed that the media, like after Bush was elected, or when he was running for election against, um, what's his name, Al Gore. Like the media, when people wanted to talk about, whenever anyone brought up God or Jesus, like they would be cut off, or the camera would turn away and they'd go to another news clip. And I was like going, wow, that's pretty weird and strange. You know, never was a problem to talk about God before in the news, like when I was growing up. You know, there was no problem at all. And then, of course, when the war went on, right, I noticed the Democrats were kind of like marginalizing the Muslim community. And the media was saying that, you know, there's like a rise of white supremacy against, or prejudice against the Muslims or something. And they would be kind of like saying the Republicans were, you know, against Muslims and all this other stuff. And I just was hearing all this stuff and going, well, that's kind of weird because my dad's a conservative. I wasn't, but my dad was, and he doesn't hate people. In fact, he's very helpful to people. If there's people in need, you know, and he could provide, he would provide it. You know, well, he was, of course, he was a little particular, like he wasn't gonna, you know, just give out money to anybody, but, you know. You know, he was wise when he helped people. He wasn't going to get taken advantage of, and there's nothing wrong with that. But he was always there, you know. He wasn't, like, stingy. And he wasn't the only person, you know, that I've ever known that was a conservative. And they never, like, were talking prejudiced or bad about prejudice. In fact, my friend Matt, one of my best friends, Matt, was a die-hard, you know, Republican, you know. He was very anti-liberal, as a matter of fact, but he never was prejudiced against anyone because I had my friend Lance and Vince, and they were black, and we all hung out together, you know, and had fun and was laughing and just had great times together. There was never any like animosity between us or anything. They were just people, just like we were people. We didn't like look at them any differently. So it was just all very weird to me, like this new rhetoric that was kind of really taken off in the 2000s, and then when Obama became elected, whom I voted for, because hope and change, I thought he was going to bring prosperity back to the country. Prosperity, meaning jobs, manufacturing. I had no idea, you know, again, in my ignorance, because I didn't do my own research, I didn't really know what he was all about. I was just listening to, again, his rhetoric, his speeches. And, you know, he was going to be the potentially first black president that had a chance of actually winning. So, to be honest, I did vote for him. That was 50% of the reason that I was voting for him. So that might not have been a good reason. But I really, again, wanted to support history, right? We made all this progress, right? All this progress from ever since we became a nation. And this was like the last real crown that you could say, okay, finally a black president. You know, racism, at least in general, is dead, has been overcome. And a lot of people, I'm sure, were very excited, like I was. You know, and we were hoping that this president was going to help poor people, help the black people who might have been ignored, of course, by Democrats. Of course, I didn't know that at the time. I kind of noticed it in cities that I knew were run by Democrats. But again, I didn't know all the ins and outs and all the, you know, again, I didn't do my research. I was just listening to the media. I was just listening to the Democrats because that's who I'm supposed to listen to, right? They're the party for the people. That's what I always thought. Because that's what you always heard. So now fast forward to a little bit later, because Obama basically didn't do anything good for the country as far as I'm concerned. And then all of his rhetoric on TV about these like shootings with the police and all that was like, what is happening here? And of course I found out later on that the media was not representing these police shootings properly. They were basically doing what they were doing, same thing they're doing today, not representing the situation factually, appropriately. They're only telling a very small, showing a small portion of the story. So fast forward now. And now fast forward to Trump being elected, whom I didn't elect, by the way. I didn't vote for, by the way. Uh, the reaction of his, when he was running for president, I noticed all this like talk about white supremacy, Trump is a white supremacist, and all this stuff, and you know, then NBC brought out the thing, you know, with him in a trailer, talking, you know, the locker room talk or whatever he called it, you know, and which is really just talk, you know. Again, it wasn't really a confession of anything. It was just talk, and it might have been his experience, which is fine. I mean. There was a lot of things, you know, in the 70s and 80s that people did that would be considered today a little more questionable or unacceptable, okay? And men and women engaged in it, so whatever. That's another story. You know, and I knew, and I was following the election very carefully, trust me. And then, you know, I noticed that what Trump was talking about. He was talking about immigration and all this other stuff, and he was talking about the economy. He was talking about China. And in my mind, I was going, well, okay, that's kind of interesting topics that no one really was talking about much of. You know, I always want to bring jobs back to America. I really always hated seeing that the jobs were leaving. But again, I did not know why. Because I didn't do my research. I was ignorant. I was just listening to the media. And so, again, with all this white supremacy talk and Trump is so bad and all this, and I'm like going, well, I was never somebody who like loved Trump or anything like that, or really just liked the guy generally. I mean, I remember the media had a lot of bad things to say about him, like in certain time periods. You know. But again, they didn't tell the whole story, even in those situations. And to be honest, I never really gave Trump a chance to even listen to him back in the 80s and the 90s. So, you know, there's that. So, so then when Trump, and when they were talking about Trump being a racist, and when NBC released that video of the trailer talk, that's when I kind of started, it didn't click yet, but something in my mind was going, why is the media, why would NBC record something like that and then sit on it? And then all of a sudden release it during election time. Right? That's when I first kind of caught a glimpse of the media bias. Besides, like I said, those little, or I guess I should say that's when I realized there was media bias. Like not just basic media bias, because everybody's kind of biased, but when they were heavily leaning towards like the Democrat side, you know. I didn't look at it, oh, the media's on our side, yay. I looked at it like, whoa, this is a problem. The news is supposed to be translating to me accurate information. So that threw up a really big red flag to me. They might have thought it was clever of them to do that, but I think a lot of people like me, and I'm not Mr. Bright, you know what I'm saying? We're starting to like wonder, the white supremacy talk, and I knew Trump wasn't a white supremacist. I mean, that's the stupidest thing in the world. I don't know why people keep saying that. Just because he might have had some acquaintances or even friends who themselves might have been white supremacists. I mean, I don't even know if they were. I'm just saying. Like, I'm not a hateful person. I'm willing to be friends with anyone. I mean, I won't be friends with somebody who's like literally hanging people on nooses. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, if somebody wants to befriend me and we become friends and I may not know like what they do in their private time or, you know, whatever the case is, you know, I'm not going to sit there and turn somebody away. I mean, this is what Christianity is all about, right? If we're a Christian, and I'm not a great Christian, trust me, I'm a horrible one, but if as a Christian, you're supposed to associate with people. You're supposed to connect with people, you know? And again, I'm not going to connect with like somebody who's literally hurting people right now, you know, or may have hurt people severely in the past. But if somebody wants to be my friend, I'm not going to turn that person away. I mean, that's just silly to even like. I don't even understand that kind of mentality. That's just hate. That's hate. You're being hateful. You know, Jesus tells us to love our enemy. You know, even because you can't change somebody if you're never gonna like have an influence on them. You know. So anyway, I'm not gonna get caught on that. So anyway, Trump got, but surprising to even me, Trump got elected. And when Trump got elected, I was like, wow. And I didn't think it was impossible, but you know, there was all the media was saying about the polls and all this other stuff and all this horrible things about Trump, and you know, I was like saying, this guy has no chance in the world. And oh, and the other thing that I forgot to mention was the whole FBI thing. That was another red flag. You know, when Comey was coming forward and saying, oh, there might be tampering with the election. Because apparently they must have seen Trump, I guess, making some headway somewhere. I mean, I guess they figured that was going to throw him in the dumps, right? To say that his campaign was involved in... Oh my God, this is not good. I am nowhere safe. Oh my God, that was scary. Whew. And then when the FBI came forward and said there might have been some tampering by the Trump administration or the Trump campaign, I was like, okay, like wow, you know, like this is just so much like, what's the old saying? If there's just too many like, there's one saying that says if there's too many coincidences, it must be true, right? But it also works in the reverse. That if there's just so many negatives, portrayals of a person, you have to start questioning whether it is even true. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there was just so much like attacking and negativity surrounding Trump that in your mind you're just going, you almost start to feel sorry for the person, because it's like, it's almost like the bullies have ganged up on the the little kid, in the playground that's wearing the glasses. That would be me when I was a kid. Um, and you would have to scratch your head and say, man, what is up with this kid? Like, what is so bad about this kid? You have to start asking yourself these questions, right? Um, it just begs to investigate, you know? Darn it. Oh, he got him. Nice. I was hoping that second shot did something. So, and that was another red flag that came up. Was why is the FBI like announcing all this now, like a month, a couple months before the election? It just seems a little too coincidental to me, so really what started happening here at that point was I was just saying, this is weird, man. And I started thinking too, I was buying into what the media was saying about how Trump is just going to I don't know, be the worst thing for America. And when, believe it or not, when Trump got elected, well, back to the coincidences, right? There's too many coincidences. I'm going to come back to that later. When Trump got elected, I was like, wow, that's crazy. Like, Trump got elected. And, I thought that everybody loved Obama still. Like I said, I was out of touch. I wasn't doing my research. I wasn't seeing what he was actually doing. The policies that he was putting in place, the regulations that he was putting in place. Like, the whole thing with remember the thing that happened with the solar panel company, where like he gave $500 million to or something like that to the solar panel manufacturer, and then all of a sudden, like later on, it went under. So that was like $500 million gone. Of course, it wasn't gone. It went to his buddies, apparently. So obviously, some people benefited. It wasn't the American people. So things like that were just really weird. So when Trump got elected, I was like, wow, this is a whole new era. And little did I know, like, how true that statement was going to be. Oh, why has it got to go fast all of a sudden? And I could tell you that I was actually scared. I don't know why, but I just had this scary feeling. And after that feeling was just gnawing at me for a while, I started to realize it wasn't fear. Like, it wasn't the fear that I was thinking it was. It was conviction. It was conviction. Okay? And then I didn't act on it immediately, though. It was conviction, though. And then after Trump got into office and then the media was going on about this Russian collusion thing, I was just like, man, this is just insane. Like, This guy was getting like bombarded for 2 years straight, right? In 2015, 2016. And Ben Carson was promoting Trump too, which was kind of odd to me. Even though he's a Seventh-day Adventist and I am a Seventh-day Adventist too. That kind of stuck in the back of my head as well. And the fact that Ben Carson was running as a Republican, that stuck in my head. But so the media just kept like on him, and it was just like this. It was just insane, like how relentless they were about. All you heard was just Trump, 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 bad Trump, bad Trump, Trump this, Trump that. Like there was no news anymore. Like the national news turned into like a attack Trump, white supremacy everywhere, just like crazy. Like it was almost like a dream. Like what am I watching? What am I seeing? What dimension am I in? Basically. And so I was thinking back to that fear that I had when Trump got elected. Right, I was thinking back to that fear and going, you know, that wasn't fear, that was conviction. So I was like, let me start following this stuff. You know, so I started following the media and the coverage of the Russian collusion and all this other stuff, right? And that went on through, 2018. I was following all that. I didn't really change my stance per se, but I was footnoting all the things that I was like witnessing from the 90s all the way up until that point. Like it was all being filed away, you know. The attack on Christians, the attack on the conservatives, the attack on Trump, the white supremacies thing, and now all of a sudden racism was coming into play. And I noticed too, like on YouTube, and I got a Twitter account, and you know, I was a Democrat, right? Just talking as I would normally talk. Just what I thought most Democrats were all about, you know? And I noticed that when I left messages on YouTube, especially about like God and science, and even like if I mentioned just one little thing that I noticed about Trump that wasn't exactly true, that the media was saying was true about him, man, the backlash that I got was like insane. Like, you got to remember, I was not really into politics or into the scene or even commenting a whole lot on YouTube or and I didn't have Twitter. I was on Facebook, and I noticed like during Obama things were getting a little heated on that, but you know, I was on the Democrat side, remember, fighting. I was basically just spewing out what the Democrats were saying. And didn't realize that I was on the side of the attacker, right? So, but what I noticed was that stuff that I knew to be true that I mentioned on social media, like on YouTube, like on the gaming channels, because you know I'm a gamer, and like the tech channels when I watched like tech channel like Gaming Nexus and all that stuff. Like I noticed that they were doing like this weird thing, like always bashing Intel, always bashing Nvidia, always in favor of AMD. And I'm like going, why is everyone like coddling AMD and like trying to destroy Nvidia and Intel, who have for years brought out good products? You know, you can debate all day long like whether Intel brought out, you know, the basically the same architecture, but just made little improvements to it and called it something different, it still was a good product. Same thing with Nvidia. Their video cards have been AAA for years now. There was really little problems with them. So that's why I switched from Radeon to Nvidia, especially after AMD took over Radeon. They just had cards that overheated and died on me all the time. I just stopped buying them and went straight Nvidia. So I was always like going, what is this like bashing thing? And I noticed that it wasn't just like one person. It was like this gang of like, what I saw in the media, like the media channels and the Democrats would just be ganging up on the Republicans and conservatives and Christians and Trump. And it's like, so I started noticing this in the tech world and the gaming industry, is that you had like Polygon and PC Gamer and IGN and Kotaku and all these like tech sites, tech channels, gaming sites, gaming channels were just like, most of them were all in on attacking Intel and Nvidia. It was like this like mob. It was basically a mob, a media mob. And I would be like telling people I never had a problem with an Nvidia card, but I did have problems with like the AMD GPUs. And man, I would get attacked. I would be called a shill and all this other stuff. Same thing with AMD and the CPUs. When Ryzen first came out, I'm like, what is the hype over all this? They still don't beat Intel. And that's all I care about right now, is I want a fast processor and one that's going to do everything I need it to do. And like if I said that Intel was still better, oh man, I would just get attacked. It was just insane. And on YouTube, if I mentioned God, I'd get attacked. Or if I said that science was teaching stuff that wasn't really accurate, it wasn't based on real empirical evidence, man, I would just get attacked. So it's just crazy. And so all this stuff, again, this is just, it's all coming to a climax, right? So then, so in 2018, I ended up still voting Democrat. And I really wish I didn't. I really wish I did not. Because I was still listening to the mainstream media. I was still kind of like weary about Trump. Why? Because I wasn't doing my own research. I was just listening to the media. I didn't bother watching Trump too much or anything. And it wasn't until really 2018, in January, when I found out that the whole Russian collusion thing... What? No, you guys are going to be going to bed at a reasonable time today. And plus, I'm not near you, like I said. You're going to end up dying, right? Yeah, well, I can't help you if I'm not near you. Yeah, okay, well, go ahead and you do that. But you might kill the server. I don't want to do that. Next time, Jay, not tonight. Now, I asked you... I asked you before if you wanted to play, and you told me no, so that's why I didn't bother asking you. Plus, but if you want to play with me, next time I play, what's up with this guy? So when 2018 came, and then I found out that the Russian collusion thing was nothing but a yes. No. Maybe when I'm done here. So when I found out the whole Russian collusion thing was just a big nothingness, and that we were all being led astray the whole time, that really didn't sit well with me. And I didn't change though right away. Again, mind you. But that really made me start looking into everything that I saw over the years and what was happening here, what was going on here. And you know, with people attacking me on Twitter, with people attacking me on YouTube, as a Democrat now, remember. I was not a conservative. I was just talking, you know, just speaking my mind, my own mind. I have a conscience, you know, freedom of conscience, right? And then people were starting to call me racist. And I'm like, what? Like, call me racist regarding things that had nothing to do with racism. Like the fact that I don't buy into this whole climate change doomsday thing. No, I may not, I may possibly could agree that there's some kind of maybe evidence of climate change, but I don't see it turning into a doomsday scenario, because what little I do know about science and the basics of science that we all learn in school would not turn it into some kind of climate change doomsday scenario. And I've been hearing about climate change for 40 years. 40 years. 40. Right? Let that sink in. 40 years of how the world is going to be dead and all hot. Global warming. Ouch. And for 40 years they've been wrong. They kept changing their models. Changing their predictions. But what I started noticing is how extreme the predictions had come. Right? Like instead of saying, like, for instance, what we were hearing was that, you know, global warming could become a problem in 100, 200 years or 500 years or whatever. The number kept shrinking, right? And it got to a point where they were saying, like, when Al Gore was spewing all his spiel in the 2000s, that it was going to be like 12 years away or something like that. We were going to be at the precipice of no turning back. Like things were going to be like, you know, so bad. And well, 12 years came and gone, and I just didn't think anything of it. And then now I was hearing again, it's even worse. You know, within 11 years we're going to have, you know, point of no return or whatever they want to say, you know. And I was just like, not this again. I'm like going, what is this? Like, and it seemed like always around election times, this kind of rhetoric would ramp up, right? It just seemed, again, coincidence. This is where the coincidences started piling up for me, right? From the 2000s, the late 90s, all the way up to today. When you have too many coincidences here, something devious is going on. Something is happening. So it wasn't on the side of Trump or the conservatives. It was on the side of the Democrats and the left, who now I know the left. I didn't really realize the left had such control. I didn't realize that Marxists were like, Marxism was popular in America. I'm like going, who would want Marxism? That's so insane to like be wanting to vote for that. Guys, please stay away from the cord, because if you knock it out, everything's going to shut down. So I started watching things in 2018 and following the media, but this time I did something different. I started watching Trump's press conferences. Okay? I started watching the Democrats, and then I started watching Trump, and I was looking at the two sides. And I was looking at the media versus what was actually being done. Like, for instance, I was looking at what the media was saying and what Trump was saying. Okay? And what did I find? Okay, this is all going back to what Obama was saying this week, or this past week at the Democrat National Convention. What I found out was the media was totally misrepresenting or even lying about what Trump was saying at his rallies and at his press conferences. And that what the Democrats were saying at their press conferences was totally opposite of what Trump was actually doing. And they kept saying that Trump is not helping, Trump is bad, Trump is making the country worse. When all during the time that they're saying all these things, Trump is actually passing laws and making policy and signing executive orders. Get out of the camera. To actually help people, like everyday people. And I couldn't make sense of it. I'm like going, man, this is nuts. Like, what is going on with the media? Like, what have they become? So it wasn't Trump that changed me. It wasn't a conservative that changed me. It wasn't even my dad who changed me, because I was arguing with him all the time. When he was trying to tell me things. He was trying to tell me things. Good grief, man, this rain. The game is against me. Waiting for it to go. So my dad was actually I was arguing with my dad, not heavily. I mean, I always respected him, but I wasn't listening to him when he was trying to tell me what was happening, and I really regret that now. But At least I should have listened and then did my research at that time. You know? So don't be closed-minded in any situation. And especially if people tell you don't listen to the other side, that is a red flag in and of itself. When people tell you don't listen to the other side. I mean, you have to know what the other side is thinking. You know, you have to know where they're coming from. in order to understand them. It's like with Christianity, right? I always tell people, look, read your Bible, know your Bible. Don't listen to just what a preacher says, or just what you've been taught all your life, or just what you see on TV or in movies, or whatever the case is. You know, like the seventh-day Sabbath, right? That's the fourth commandment in the Bible. Now the Catholic Church, you know, wants to change the commandments on their end, and you know, they split the last commandment into two, and they get rid of the one that talks about, you know, statues, you know, idols. And I think the fourth commandment, or whatever, the third, I guess it's now the fourth commandment, it just says, keep the Lord's Day or something. It doesn't say keep the seventh-day Sabbath. So, like, a lot of people go to church on Sunday. Why? Because they think that's the Sabbath, but it's not the Sabbath. So, why do they keep Sunday? Well, it's because of the tradition that they still kept. The Protestant churches might have kind of broke away from the Catholic Church, but they still kept the Sunday tradition. Okay? Because they didn't know their Bibles. Because the Catholic Church was keeping the common people from knowing their Bibles. So it took a little while for the Protestants to, at least some of the Protestants, to realize that they weren't keeping the right Sabbath, or they weren't keeping the Sabbath, period, because Sunday is not a Sabbath at all. So, like, you know, so that's one thing that people follow is Sunday, because they don't do their own research, or they listen to other people, their church tell them don't listen to any other point of view. You know, so like the Catholic Church will say, don't listen to the Protestant churches. You know, shut your mind off to them. They're heretics. You know, or whatever mumbo jumbo they use now. You know, or the Sunday keeping churches will say, well, don't talk to the Seventh-day Adventists, or you know, the Seventh-day Church of Gods, or whatever. You know, because we got to keep Sunday in honor of the resurrection of Jesus, but that's not what God told us to do. So I'm not going to get on to that, but it's important that you need to have an open mind, because you need to be able to listen to the other side. You need to be able to do your own research. You know, study to show yourself approved. That's what the Bible says about studying the Bible, right? About believing the Bible. God says study to show yourself approved, right? So that you're confident in what you believe. So, again, back to my testimony here about why I left the Democrat Party. So basically it came down to that. I saw a lot of this, like, Trump doing this, Trump saying that, and the media twisting it or lying about it, or even ignoring it. Like, they didn't really cover much of the, they didn't really cover much of the good stuff that Trump was doing. You know what I mean? Like, I hardly heard much. They did cover the criminal justice reform, only because the Democrats were using that to their advantage, because some Democrats got together with the Republicans and because Trump was inspiring it and got the bill passed. So they were trying to take credit for it. Okay, when they had, 8 Obama years to take care of it. Right? And they didn't do a thing. So you see what they do, right? See what happened there? Trump does something good and they're going to take credit for it. So I was seeing that too. So, and then this Black Lives Matter movement started coming back again, and the cop shootings were being highlighted again like they were back in 2012. And I'm going, why is this hatred for police all of a sudden? You know? Like, I've been around police all my life. Again, I'm almost 50. So, um, why this hatred for police? Even in 2012, I was wondering what was going on with that. And I know for a fact that police weren't just going around killing people. I mean, that's absurd to even think that. Like, why would you even think that? I mean, any common person who lives life, we all walk around and we all see cops everywhere. Ooh, a rare. The rare. Oh, the rare. Ah, look at this. What a treat. Sad, I'm afraid to shoot him right here because he might end up coming up on me. I'm gonna wait. Oh, he saw me. That's not good. Oh, Lord. Wow. Woo. I wanted to get the... That's a shame because Jaden needed the heavyweight. Oh wait, this is not the rare. This is the... This guy dropped this thing on me and left it. Oh my Lord. Bummy guy. That's the queen. I thought that was the rare.